So I took a little trip to the emergency room while I was in the middle of doing this whole painting illustration thing, and that is why I have this lovely little number on my finger. Doesn't it look nice? I even decorated it with some washi tape instead of the medical tape that I got. And it doesn't really hurt so much anymore, but it is quite unsightly, so that's why I have this weird little fingertip on. But anyways, let's get to the animation. So I'm going to pause the video very quickly because I feel like I didn't properly explain what I'm actually doing today. So on Instagram, I saw that Jacquelin was doing a draw this in your style challenge thing, so I decided to take that and illustrate it in watercolor, which I did not include in this video because it was way too long already. But I painted my lovely little lady here without hair or anything, so that later I could go on top of that and animate digitally. So it's a photo of a watercolor illustration, and then I have elements digitally animated on top of that. Okay, back to the video. So I already took a photo, I already took a photo of my watercolor painting, so I'm going to put that aside for now. And this is what I have so far. So I brought in the original sketch line art, and I'm pretty much just going to trace over it and kind of clean up the hair business right now. I have the first layer of the hair line art ready, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace over it maybe 3 or 4 more times, but make it look a little bit different. So for example, like in the bangs, I would make the bangs kind of flow back and forth like they are kind of blowing around in the wind. So to make the actual animation, I'm going to just trace over it. So I'm going to lower the opacity quite a bit and then just trace on top of it, but make the line art a little bit different, like the hair is indeed blowing. So I'm going to make the bangs kind of blowing this direction first, to the left, when you're looking at it downwards. So I don't want to make it too different than the original, but I'm just gonna kind of make these little chunks blowing in the opposite direction of where the hair is laying right now. Okay, and then I'm gonna do the same with the hair, but the whole body of hair. For example, these 2 parts of the hair that are pulled up into the little buns, I'm not going to change too much since they are tied down, so they probably wouldn't be kind of flowing in the wind quite as much. So I'm going to leave those mostly the same as they are currently. Okay, and then when it comes to the actual length of her hair, I'm also not going to change it too much, but I'm just going to scooch it over a little bit to the left. I might make one more layer where it's moving to the left, and then I'm going to start going to the right, so pretty much the opposite. Okay, and I think I quite like how that looks. So now what I'm going to do, reverse it back so I'm back in that. So I'm literally just doing the opposite. I'm gonna make the hair kind of pushed toward the right, like it's blowing in the wind that way. And I think I am pretty much done with the hair. So since Procreate now thankfully has an animation feature, I can just do a little test. So I'm gonna turn every single other layer off, including my actual drawing, just so it cycles through the hair so we can see the hair animation. Okay, so here is the look at the hair animation so far, and I think it looks quite nice. But just for the first test, I quite like it, and I think I can go ahead and move on to doing the color for the hair. First of all, to pick the color, I'm gonna grab one of the colors from the jeans that I have right now from her shorts. So I want it to be cohesive. So let me see, one of the not too dark colors. Maybe something like this. Let's see how this looks. Maybe I'm gonna make it a little bit more saturated if that's possible. A little lighter, a little more saturated. Yeah, I think that's fine for the base layer. So I'm just gonna fill everything in with this color. So I'm gonna go underneath my line art layer, and then with one of my pencils here, or paintbrushes, or whatever you want to call it, I'm just gonna go around, and since this is I'm doing the animation on top of my watercolor, I'm gonna have to be careful for going around, for example, the ear here. I have to carefully go around the ear and all the piercings and everything, so those will still show on top. But then, for example, the bangs and the hair that's on top of the face, I can easily just go right on top of the painting. So doing this, I'm just gonna be very careful and go around like the hoodie, the shoulders and everything, and then for the bangs, go on top of the face of the painting that I already have. I have so far finished filling in all of the layers of the hair, but I noticed a little bit of a problem. As you may be able to tell, she is missing a chunk of her forehead that I didn't paint in with my watercolors. So what I'm going to do to alleviate that is I'm just going to add a new layer on top of the watercolor image. And then I'm going to very carefully take a pretty soft brush and select just one of the colors that I already have on the skin. And then what I'm going to do on this new layer is I'm going to kind of just create a bigger shape so I know just about where I need to cover up. Go through all of my layers and make sure that the hair is properly, or the forehead is being properly covered. Okay, so I can tell already that I'm gonna just lower this down a little bit so it blends in with the watercolor that I already have there. Okay, so I think that looks decent, and now I just need to blend it. So I'm gonna keep selecting colors that are already here on the forehead and kind of just blend it out. Okay, so I will admit, like for this one, that looks a little bit awkward, so I think I'm gonna touch up the hair a little bit so it doesn't look like she is balding. So for the shading, what I'm gonna do is just add another layer on top of the solid layer that we have already. I'm gonna select it to clipping mask, and then I'm gonna go down to the pants again and select a slightly darker color than what we have already, so I can keep the color palette very unison. Let's see how this looks. Okay, I think I like that color much better. So now I'm just gonna go in and kind of just wing the shading a little bit. So I don't want it to look too exact, especially since I am working with watercolor, and I don't want it to pop off and look too smooth on top of the illustration that's already there. So I'm gonna roughly just block in some shadows. Okay, so I think that's all I want to do for the shadows. Now I'm gonna add another layer, select the clipping mask, and then select another lighter color from the pants, so maybe like a nice light blue. Let me see how that looks. So I think I quite like that, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump into doing very minimal highlights, since in the original there's only a little bit of highlights on the top. So I'm just going to plop a little bit of those in, and then I'm gonna rinse and repeat the same exact shading and highlighting process for all of the layers of hair. So I think I'm actually just gonna stick with a couple, like these 4 little sections in the background, and I'm not gonna have anything in the front here on top of the tree stump. I have that, and on top of that I'm going to maybe I'm not going to do any line art for this part, and I'm just going to do the color without line art. So I think I'm going to first select my colors and then have a little color map at the top here. So I have selected a brownish, like a mid-tone brown that's already in the tree stump, so it looks unison and even. Okay, so there's my brown for the branches, and then I'm going to select this nice bright green color for the leaves. And then I'm going to go ahead and start filling in the trees in the background. So I'm just going to go ahead and leaves, I think I'm going to go in with that shading, the line art shade, and do a little bit of shading with that, and then also add a highlight. So I merged the lines and the color fill together into one layer, and now I'm going to add a new layer, clipping mask, take that line art layer, and then really roughly shade in on the bottom here, just a little bit. And then I'm going to go in with a lighter, like a more bright yellowy color for the highlights. At this point, all of my layers are completed, and now I just need to assemble them properly so it looks how it's supposed to be looking, or at least how I envision it. So the first thing I need to do is that I'm going to divide it up into 3 different layers, I think. Yes, 3 different layers. So I'm going to do the watercolor illustration, and I'm going to export that first by itself, and then I'm going to do the hair, and then I'm going to do the plants. So I'm going to start, and I need to turn off all of the hair, and then I'm going to leave all of these little details that I added, like for example the eye color and the blush and everything. So first I'm just going to export this as a PNG, okay, and now I'm going to turn off all of these layers and make the background transparent. So the next thing I'm going to do is the hair. So I'm going to go through, select the shading, the line art, and the flat color of the hair, and export every single one of those layers individually as well. And you have to do this as a PNG so that there will be a transparent background. And for the background, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave the background just transparent, so there's no white background or anything. And then I'm going to go in and open up my layers in the proper order, and then make sure all of my layers are selected on, and then export it as a PNG. Okay, so I finally have all of my layers exported properly, hopefully, and now I'm going to go into LumaFusion, which is my video editing app, and open up a new file that is the same canvas size as my original photo. So now when I start the whole animation process, I'm in my video editing app, and first things first, I'm just going to insert my watercolor image, so the flat base image that I have. Okay, so I have that, and it's gonna hold on for 2 seconds, and now I'm gonna start with the hair. So I have in my settings that my photos, when I drag them in, are 0.04 seconds. And now I'm going to just start dragging in the hair animation first on top. Okay, so I have all of my hair layers looping once, and now we just need the trees in there. And so I'm going to keep looping them, so putting all the images back in so they loop together for a few seconds. Okay, so here's my animation so far, and I feel like everything is going a little bit too wild. So I think I'm going to play around with the time that each of my layers are set up with. I think I'm going to make them a little bit longer. I'm going to play around with it a bit. But this is the basic setup. So I have the watercolor painting on the bottom, then the middle layer is the hair, and the top layer is the grass and such. And anyways, I think that is all. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested, subscribe for more, and also check out my Instagram at ursa.allen, where you can see this final illustration / animation, and also many more things that I create. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Toodles!